Hello and welcome to the Beer Chef. In today's video we will be talking about the mystery of the missing yeast shield. That's right, if you buy a new Pinter 3 today, the chances are that the tap inside it will not have this yeast shield in situ anymore. Unless you get an old unit that's already got one on, moving forward Pinter will not be providing these any longer. Now, it should be said that in the UK, these have been out of stock for many months, as long as I can remember, in the Pinter store online. Ironically, in the States, these are still available to buy. However, they are actually 10 times the price of what we are being charged or were being charged in the UK, which seems a little bit steep to me. So the big question, why are Pinter no longer providing the yeast shield on the tap? Common sense would lead you to believe that it's probably a cost-cutting exercise. It's something that they can reduce the cost of the Pinter 3, the cost of the tap, by just no longer providing this little device. Now, Pinter don't phrase it quite that way. Pinter's official response is that this is the new style tap. This is the new version of the tap. So let me just show you this for clarity. That's the original Pinter 3 tap, and this is the new style tap, which is now they consider optimized. So they've optimized this tap by removing this. I think they've optimized this tap in the same way that they've probably optimized their customer service with AI. And I think we've all experienced what that optimization feels like. It does raise the question in my mind that if this is now considered a optimized version of the tap, they've looked at this and reconsidered the design and decided that this should never have been put on there and it's more optimized in this state. It does raise the question, why are they still selling these in the States? Why are they actually selling these for people to buy to put on a tap that they consider more optimized without it? That is another little mystery for me, and why anybody would go ahead and buy one of these, if that's really the case, I have no idea. Pinter do not consider this a critical part of the tap design, and in all honesty and jokes aside, I would agree with that this is not a critical part of this tap design. It's not critical. You know, this tap will do the job well, and in truth, whether you'd even notice a difference, whether you've used a yeast shield or not, remains to be seen. You know, you'd have to do tests, comparisons to actually determine that. But one thing I would say is when they designed this tap, you know, this yeast shield was put on for a purpose. And the purpose, I believe, is that you've no doubt noticed that this is made out of a silicone that's very slippery. Not much sticks to it at all. When it comes to washing it, you've no doubt noticed that this is very easy to clean because things just can't stick to it by the nature of the material. So when you plug your tap with a yeast shield into your Pinter and flip it upright for fermentation, this yeast shield, as the fermentation progresses towards the end and the yeast is spent and starts to clump and starts to sink through your wort and into your docking station, this yeast shield, I believe, is just to deflect that and to stop it sticking around the tap itself and forming a load of mess around the tap being stuck. I don't think it would impair the operation of the tap. I just believe that it would make the tap contaminated with spent yeast, which would then go into your conditioning process and take more spent yeast into the Pinter when the dock is being disconnected. So that's the purpose of that. To my knowledge, there's no other sensible reason why that has been put on there. If you take this off, you can see the design of the tap. There are flat edges. Whilst this is quite smooth, it's not as slippery as this. So the possibility of yeast sticking to this mechanism or forming itself around the edges here and forming a build-up of spent yeast is possible. To what extent that would happen, I really don't know. I've not done any tests on this. So do I think this is a critical part and it is going to cause us lots of trouble? No, I don't, missing this out, but I would say that if you have got these, I would go ahead and continue to use them, which I certainly will myself. Regular viewers to my channel will know that I am no stranger to optimization on the Pinter. The face plates on the Pinter, I find them pretty much good for nothing, so I put them in the bin. The rubber feet, I find better off taking them off and putting them in the bin to let any trapped water out effectively and let the inner between the shell and the fermentation vessel dry. So there are bits and pieces that I take off the Pinter and put in the bin anyway, so I'm no stranger to optimization. Now, I have actually gone one step further here and fully optimized one of my Pinter 3s. Is this where Pinter's heading with their optimization? If you keep taking bits off that are not critical and don't have to be there, this is what we're going to end up with, which of course is the fermentation vessel inside the Pinter 3 sitting on a docking station. That is it. That is your Pinter 3 right there. And of course, this is where your tap goes in here. And as you can see from this, if you like, streamlined version, that it's nothing more than a small batch pressure fermentation vessel, which is what the Pinter 3 is, of course. It's not the only one on the market. And more commonly, this is what pressure fermentation vessels will look like. They don't usually have the casing of the Pinter and all the fluff to go with it. They come in sort of like a basic format like that. You know, so I will actually do a few brews in this in the optimized state. I will call this, instead of being called the Pinter 3 moving forward, I will call this the optimizer. So I will do a few brews in my optimizer and we'll see how that works out. It'll probably be easier to clean, certainly around all these valves on the top. And so that will be just a bit of fun. But of course, another thing, when you see this and you see that this is what you are fermenting and brewing in, when people ask you what type of brewing do you do, I would suggest that you tell them not that you're a Pinter brewer. That sounds a little bit lame to me. I would suggest that you tell them that you're a small batch pressure fermentation brewer. That's what you are. You're a small batch pressure fermenter. That's the method that you use. And that's the skill set that you are actually learning in brewing with the Pinter 3. And who knows, one day there are alternatives. There's this one here, which is inexpensive. It's less to buy from the Pinter. And it's a very decent unit. You can see small batch as well, 10 litres that is. And then of course, if you've got deep pockets, you know, then you've got this bad boy here. Like, now this is going to be expensive, but I would like to get my hands on one of those one day and do some small batch pressure fermentation in that. So there you go. That is what we are looking at. I'll do a couple of brews in that in just for a bit of fun with this optimization theme. And that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments on this subject matter, then please leave your comments below and we'll all have a quick look and we'll talk it through, see what we think together. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.